I'm ready. Okay, this lecture is based on Learning Unit 4, which is basically your Chapter 5 of the prescribed textbook, and is based on project management knowledge areas. Well, for now, I won't tackle all the areas as such, but mainly I am going to basically explain a risk, project risk management, and then the project quality management, and mainly I'll focus on the types of control and the control process that you need to follow. And then later on Blackboard, I'll load the quality management plan that you can actually refer to if you work out your project quality management plan. And then lastly, we're going to look at the communication management. Those are the 3 knowledge areas that we're going to tackle in this learning unit. Okay, furthermore, what I haven't mentioned before is that I don't have outcomes, learning unit outcomes here on my PowerPoint slides, but they are all mentioned on Vutela, where I introduce the learning unit outcomes, and even your learner guide has got all the learning unit outcomes. Okay, project risk management. So what is a risk? They say a risk can be briefly defined as the estimated extent of uncertainty. In other words, we may not be sure as to what will happen as we work on our project, and what are the things that might cause us to incur some losses and so forth. Those are risks. Anything that will make us incur some losses, we call that a risk. Then risk management can thus be defined as the identification, quantification, response development, and response control processes used to minimize adverse consequences and maximize positive opportunities. We quote, that is by Bischoff et al. 2004. Managing risks. Steps to be followed to manage risk effectively are as follows. Number 1, identify the type, the level, and the source of foreseeable risk. It's very important. When you do your planning, you always need to foresee as to what could happen, and if that happened, what our response is supposed to be, and what are the contingency plans. Then they say here, a project manager can examine the possible cause of a risk and their consequences, that is, what may happen and what would follow if they did happen. They can further look at their causes. Example could be the bricks that are delivered late, or rather the delivery that is delayed. That is a risk, because if ever you're building and whatever that you need to use to build is delivered, late, the possibilities that the people that are working in that particular project would be idling, waiting for the bricks to be delivered. So that will cause you to incur some unnecessary costs or losses. So that is a definite risk. Then here we got typical sources of risk. Number one is new activities or products and services. That's true. If ever you're doing something for the first time, there's high possibility that you may incur unnecessary costs, or that you may not even conduct or rather handle that particular or carry out that activity the way it should. Disposal or cessation of current services, outsourcing to external service providers. They're definitely possible risk sources, because once you outsource, they may not do the things the way you would have done them. Like, for instance, it can happen that the people that are working for the people that you outsource your services to, they are on strike. Then what's going to happen? You won't be able to carry on with your work as you would if ever that particular task or activities were done by you. Another one that I like most is misinformation. That is a definite source of risk. If ever not, like, the information that is given to you, it's missing some other important factors, you may find yourself exposing yourself and unnecessary risk, sometimes even fatal ones. And you can actually go through all of them. These are basically the sources of risks. I guess they are quite simple. You'll understand them with ease. Then step number 2 under managing risk, we say that you need to analyze and assessing that particular the risks. Once the potential sources of risk have been identified, methods that project managers can use to analyze the nature of this risk include focus group discussions, brainstorming sessions, audits or physical inspection. That's true. Or surveys, examination of local or overseas experiences, failure analysis, as well as incident, accident, and injury investigations. All these ones are basically methods that we can use to analyze and to assess the risks. An excellent tool to assess risk is the risk matrix, where the likelihood that the risk will occur is assessed and the level of impact it may have. This can further be weighted by using a scale of, for example, 1 to 9. Sorry, for the likelihood and the impact. Then multiply the two to determine the weight of that particular risk. The risk with more weight, a contingency plan has to be made for that particular risk. Or rather, high risk, you need to develop a contingency plan. What is a contingency plan? Usually we used to call it Plan B. It's basically your contingency plan. Example of a risk matrix. On this figure, the numbers on the left, that is the 1.02.2, 3.4, these risks, those numbers are basically the number of the activity on your WBS. Remember, we said the levels and the activity is supposed to be numbered like that. So those numbers are the numbers of those activities. With that 1.0, we know we're talking about the actual project, like the whole project. And then the foreseeable risk here, they say lack of project funding. What is the likelihood for this to happen? Then you can say, rank it between low, medium, and high. And then here, they decided just to mark medium. is the likelihood for it to happen is medium. But what's going to happen, if it does happen, what could be the impact? And then they are ranked it medium. So basically, this risk is a medium risk. Then if you decide to use this one, this risk matrix, to weigh your risk, I'd rather prefer that you add another, column on the right-hand side, where then you can basically say this particular risk is high, this one is medium, because now they say likelihood medium, impact medium, but what is the judgment now, like or how do you perceive that particular risk? You perceive it as now medium risk. Then the second one, we got activity 2.2, where here they foreseen a natural disaster. Then they ask themselves, okay, what are the possibilities or likelihood for this particular natural disaster to take place? Then they said, possibilities are low, but what if it does happen? Then the impact is going to be high. And then lastly here, activity 3.4, then legal consequences for that particular activity. For now, because we don't have a WBS that relates to this particular risk matrix, we cannot really tell what is that particular activity as such. And then furthermore, like we said, you can put, values so that you put a weight on those risks. You can either use this one or the risk matrix. But I prefer that you use either one, not both of them. We got all those activity numbers on the left-hand side, which I decided to put there. Then we got the foreseeable risk, and the risk element. The first one is an earthquake. And for the purpose of this module, rather, let's stay away from decimal numbers. Let's just use whole numbers. Instead of us using 0.01, we can use 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So in this regard, they said likelihood for the earthquake to take place here, let's say for instance in South Africa, it's 0.01. We don't really suffer from such things that much. And what could be an impact? Then the impact of this particular, if it does happen in South Africa, what could be an impact? Based on our experiences, then we can actually look, put these values here. Like in South Africa, we had some earthquakes in the past. Well, the impact was not that huge. So we can maybe put a 4, a 5 or so. And then when you times your likelihood value with your impact value, you get your weighting of, that is the weight of the risk. Then you have that value on that other side. So usually I tell students that rather use your whole digit, and then we can weight our risk by saying that those that would give us a final result or weight of 0 to, let's say 30, or rather 0 to 40, we say those ones are basically low risk. Then from 40, let's say to 60, and then we say those ones are medium. From 60 to 100, then you can say those ones are high. That will basically help you to, at the end of the day, determine as to which risk on your WBS you perceive as being high. And then those ones that are perceived as being high, I want the students to, at the end of the day, to develop a contingency plan. Okay. We're going to look at the contingency plan a little bit later as to what elements you need to have on, in a contingency plan. Step number 3, responding to and controlling risk. Based on the risk matrix, the project host organization has to devise appropriate responses to the risk and design actions to mitigate it, such as mitigation actions should be aimed at reducing the chance that a threat will be realized or reducing the impact of a threat that is present. In other words, you need to come up with ways to try to prevent that particular risk from happening. But if it does happen, what are the things that you can actually do to try to reduce the impact? For instance, now these days, when you drive and you see the clouds that are busy piling up, we know that it could rain, and we know that the hail could be quite huge, hail. So then that is a risk. It's a foreseeable risk, we know. I know that driving is not a project as such, but I use it so that we can understand what could be the responses that we can come up with. Then you can say, okay, fine, possibility for it to happen. If it does happen, maybe you tell yourself, I'll try to find where I can find a breach and then I can park underneath the breach or something. So those are actions basically to minimize the impact. For a project, you can come up with a nice, better example. Step number 4, contingency planning. For all risks identified with relatively high likelihoods and impacts, contingency plans should be developed. A contingency plan can be regarded as an alternative plan that will be used if a possible foreseen risk or foreseeable risk event becomes a reality. This may include preventative actions to reduce or mitigate the negative impact of the risk event. So a contingency plan needs to have these elements. Number 1, WBS identification number. Remember, the WBS identification number tells us as to which activity you basically associating that risk to. And then you need to mention the nature of the risk, as to what risk you're foreseeing. Number 3, the trigger events, very important. When to kickstart the contingency plan, you need to have that event in place. With the example of the late delivery or delayed delivery of bricks, you can say maybe, the trigger event would be if by the preceding day, by 2, the bricks are not delivered, then you need to kick in the contingency plan. What could be the contingency plan is rather organize a small truck to go and at least, fetch some, few bricks, so that tomorrow in the morning, if those bricks that you're waiting are not delivered as yet, you can then at least start with your work. You don't have to wait, to idle and to wait for that truck to come and deliver those bricks. That is a contingency plan. I'll rather use a smaller truck that we have in the company, or I'll go and ask Mtate so and so that has got a small truck to go and fetch bricks for us, so that by tomorrow we're able to carry on with our work. That is a contingency plan. But it is important that you have a trigger event. What is it that will basically inform you that now you need to start kicking in the contingency plan. Then number 4, you need to have the contingency action. I've explained that already. Then number 5, responsible person. Again, very important. You need to have a person that is responsible to kick in the contingency plan, because you don't want a situation where John would say, no, I thought Peter organized it, or Mary, no, I thought so and so will organize it. So you need to have a person that you say, Werner, you are responsible for the contingency plan, and you are the one that should give a go-ahead for it to be implemented. And then again, you need to have cost implications as to what are the implications for switching to your contingency plan, and the time implications, all that need to be stipulated. Task affected, you need to stipulate that. It becomes a very serious risk if it affects the critical path, those activities that are in the critical path. And then lastly, you need to indicate as to how that risk actually influences your critical path. Okay, here we got risk management versus non-risk management projects. The projects that have a risk management in place, you have decreased challenges, but the one without risk management, you're going to have risk from start to end. With risk management, you're going to have satisfied stakeholders. Without risk management, there's no sustainability. You go on and on up until to the last one. You basically compare the ones that are having a risk management plan and the ones that are without a risk management plan. Now, when it comes to quality management, like I said, there is a plan that you need to work out. I'll post that on Blackboard. It's just a sample. But what is important mainly is that for you to produce something of good quality, you need to have some control measures in place. And there are different types of control that you can basically use. The first one is pre-action control. Pre-action control, you predict the problems as to which problems can basically occur, and you attempt to solve them even before they occur. Then you got simultaneous control. This is applied while the project is in progress in order to prevent costs from escalating by identifying and solving problems promptly. As you're working on that thing, you're busy applying this control. An easy thing that I can actually mention that can help students possibly to understand this is when you are building, you always have your spirit level, tool with you. That is basically a control tool in a way, because you keep on checking whether you still, laying your bricks, straight, level, and so forth. You keep on, as you put in, you lay the brick, you use your spirit level. Others know it as water pass, so you can use your water pass to make sure that your bricks are correctly laid. Like when you're cooking, when you cook, what is our simultaneous control that you can use? Keep on tasting. You season your thing with salt or whatever, but you taste whether everything is done correctly. Those are control measures. Then you got post-action control measures. This takes place when the whole project has been concluded, which means that many costly problems come to light too late, unfortunately. So the ones that are much more ideal to always have and simultaneous. When you do your planning, you always come up with those control measures. When you work, you come up with those control measures. But the post ones, still you can apply those ones, but it become too late. Let's say you build a house, the house is it's having cracks and all that. What control measures that could be effective, basically, to control that at the end of the day? And that would be costly. If ever you do have them, you need to put in more cash into fixing all those problems. Then lastly, you have a yes-no screening checkpoints, which we mentioned again before, the time we explained the milestones, meaning that you cannot continue with further activity before all the standards of a current activity have been met. Like when you are building a house, you dig those trenches. Before you can cast in the concrete in there, you need to, call the inspector to come and check if, the trenches are of, prescribed width and depth and so forth. So basically that is again a type of control. Then you got a control process. You need to set performance standards for each task or activity in the project, quantifiably in terms of productivity, effectiveness, efficiency, and cost benefit. It's very important. What they mean here, your standard should be, let's say you're building cars, manufacturing cars. You can say on a daily basis, we need to have 3 cars that are done, finished, that is a standard, 3 cars in terms of quantity. And in terms of effectiveness, let's say you are manufacturing trucks. You need to state, maybe this one can actually load so much tons and so forth. Are we together? Ne? If ever you build a truck that's supposed to load 36 tons, then after you're done, you load 30 tons and then it struggles to carry that load. Then you know it is not good, because at least you can judge your performance against the standard that you set. B, you can monitor actual performance in terms of objectives that coincide logically with project objectives and focus on the critical points. You monitor if everything goes as planned. Number C, you compare actual performance with standards, whatever that you manage to do, comparing with the standards that you set. Do you see any deviations there? Then if ever there are deviations, then you need to come up with corrective actions. So it is important that students do not confuse the types of types of control and the control processes. And a process has got steps. It's very important. First step should come first. Second step, just like that, up till the last one. Project communication management. There are factors which may distort communication. It's very important. But these are the things that project managers should be aware of, so that they communicate effectively with their team members. Number 1 is extreme emotions. Extreme emotions are likely to hamper effective communication, because you are then most prone to disregard rational and objective thinking processes and substitute emotional judgments. Number B, filtering, refers to a source purposefully manipulating information so that it may seem more favorable or unfavorable to the receiver. It does happen most of the times. Filtering most of the times when you go to, if ever you want to buy a car, I don't know if you experience that. Sometimes people that are selling will filter the information. They'll give you what you want to hear so that you can eventually buy. Sometimes they do that. Then number C, words and expressions. This is very important because, words and expressions can mean different things to different people. And in terms of age, level of education, cultural backgrounds, these are the three variables that influence the language used by individuals and the definitions they give to words. The example that I can use, especially to the people that are speaking Sotho, Southern Sotho and Northern Sotho. Some words there. Same words, but they don't mean the same thing. Isn't it? Like kilapile. Kilapile means different things to different people. And there's another one. Ubutse or bucha. Butse. Butsa mewa hori. Those words, they can mean different things to different people. But anyway, in terms of this, they say, age, level of education, and cultural backgrounds. They can actually confuse people. To improve understanding to intended audience, what is it that you should do? You need to make sure that the non-verbal communication cues, always are in line with what you said. That is very important. Like, I cannot say, I am happy when I look angry. So you confuse people. I am happy, but look angry. So your non-verbal communications should basically be in line with what you say. Selective perceptions. Sometimes we all know that people hear what they want to hear. And it's sometimes very important, after you said something, you just ask a question, just to see if this person actually understood what you were saying to him or her. Then lastly, using the most appropriate channel. Very important, and sometimes depending on the actual issue at hand. You need to resort to those channels that would save you a lot of stress. Like for instance, when you use emails sometimes, you need to find a way to keep whatever information that you send to people somewhere. You save that. So that once they start saying that, nobody did not tell us, then you can somewhat, take out that particular document as proof. So that's basically channel. The reason why we saying you need to opt for an appropriate channel, because other channels, they got a lot of noise. In other words, the message can be changed, and the understanding thereof could be something else. That's the end of learning unit